You guys ready for a new Dawa knife? If so, we're going to be taking a look at this new Dawa 240mm Full Tang Kiritsuke. If you haven't already, please consider supporting the channel by hitting that like and subscribe button. We also have a merch shop and an IG knife shop if you want to further support this madness. Now, quick disclaimer, Dawa did send me this knife completely free of charge. However, they understand that my review is 100% honest and of my own. Now, for those of you guys who have been following for a while, you know we're no stranger to the brand Dawa. However, for those of you guys who are new here, Dawa is a Vietnamese forge who upcycles spring steels and pipeline steels to create affordable kitchen cutlery. Some consider these quote-unquote project knives, which means that they do have some minor imperfections that requires a little bit of elbow grease and TLC. But I do have to say that these new Dawa knives, in comparison to the ones that I bought a little over a year ago, have come a long way. Now, most Dawa knives, as you know it, comes with this Wa-style handle that they have. And this new Kiritsuke is one of their first full tang Western handle. So I'm actually really excited to review this knife. So let's jump straight in. This new Kiritsuke is 240mm long. It is 54mm tall right at the heel, and the spine thickness right at the heel is 1.85mm. The blade leads down to a full tang handle. This new Western handle is made out of a resin material held together by 3 pins. So this one is made out of a full resin handle. I see some that are a mixture of wood and resin, probably stabilized wood, but I'll be really interested to see if they will put on a full wood handle, which will make these knives really cool. And the balance point of the knife is right here at the pinch grip. Next, let's go ahead and move on to fit and finish. Let's check for straightness. Blade is nice and straight. This 𝐒𝐔𝐏 finish and the shinogi line is fairly even. Now I'm taking a closer look at the polished part of the blade, which is where underneath the shinogi line, the silver portion of the blade. And it's definitely not perfect by any means. And it leaves something to be desired. I'll get another angle so you guys can see this as well. That there are some uneven grinding and sanding marks, and that when you get closer to the edge, you will see some sharpening or scratch marks from sharpening. So it does leave a little bit something to desire, but it's a fairly easy fix. A little bit of hand sanding or even using a Scotch-Brite pad if you don't have a belt sander to use a Scotch-Brite belt. You can use the small discs that you can put on a hand drill. Those little Scotch-Brite pad, and you can just Scotch-Brite the length of the silver part, and it'll leave a nice satin-ish finish on it. So that's a fairly easy fix. Now let's take a look at this handle. This handle is nice and comfortable in the hands. It's actually very smooth. And while grabbing onto this handle, I noticed that both the spine and the choil are not fully rounded or crowned, but it is not uncomfortable by any means or sharp by any means. They have tried to, it feels like they have tried to round it just a little bit just to take the edge off. But yeah, like I said, it's not uncomfortable by any means in the hands. Now let's take a look at the fit and finish for the handle. The fit and finish for the handle is nice and tight, and there are no gaps around. Yeah. There are no gaps around the scales. So functionality wise, the handle is nice and tight on there and it's very solid. But cosmetically, there are definitely some imperfections. Like these pins are not all the way even or round. And the gluing on the pins is not all the way even. Looks like they might have made these pins themselves. I'm not sure. But it's not a true circle. And then the gluing between the scales and the tang is slightly uneven, as you guys can see here. I'll bring a different angle so you guys can see. But you can see the epoxy in between the scales and the tang. So yeah, like I said, it's all cosmetic. It's nice and tight on there, and it actually feels really comfortable in the hands. For those of you guys who are knife nerds, you probably instantly recognize this blade profile. That's because this blade, or this knife, draws inspiration from none other than the infamous Japanese master blacksmith Yu Kurosaki. It has a very prominent K-tip, and I have to say, although they call this a Kiritsuke, I would say that this is more along the lines of a profile for a K-tip Gyuto, because a true Kiritsuke has next to no belly. However, this does have quite a bit of a belly that you can see here to allow for rock cuts. So I'd say this is more along the lines of a K-tip Gyuto. Now let's take a look at the grind. The grind is nice and even. It's fairly thin, which is good, so I don't expect any wedging. And looking at this grinding on this knife, it looks like from the shinogi line, it starts the primary bevel, and right before it hits the secondary bevel, it looks like they're trying to put a little bit of convexing at the end of the primary bevel before it leads into the secondary bevel. You can even feel it on the blade. Yeah, you can feel a little bit of that convexing on the grind. You can kind of see it too when you tilt it on the reflection. I'll get another angle to see if I can catch this for you guys so you can see it. So I'm pretty interested to see how this knife is going to perform. Speaking of that, let's go ahead and get into the cut test. Alright, so first things first, let's go ahead and do a standing paper cut test to see how this guy performs. Like I said, this is fresh out of box sharpness. This is something that can be easily remedied by putting it through a fresh sharpening session when you first get the knife. So let's see. And fresh out of the box, standing paper cut test passes with no problem. Go ahead and see if it catches on this. Nope, it does not. Let's try this. The edge is not the cleanest. It's still sharp, so it can definitely probably use a little bit of cleanup. I'll show you guys the before and after too after I do the Scotch-Brite finish, so you guys can see the comparison of how easy it is to get the finish really even and nice on it. And then I'll also sharpen it as well. But sharpness wise, it's not bad out of the box. I do feel a little resistance, so I probably can use a quick sharpening session right out of the box, which is nothing wrong with it. As you guys know, I kind of like to put my own edge on the knives right out of the box anyway, because a lot of these knives, like the kitchen knives, ID knives, and these Daovua knives, sometimes they don't come the sharpest out of the box, and most knives don't. And for those of you guys who are getting more and more into knives, and the more you get into knives, the more you realize that out of the box sharpness doesn't matter as much, because a lot of times we will just put an edge on a knife that we personally like anyway, because we'll have a combination of stones that we personally like. We like the finishing of certain stones better that we're just used to using. So yeah, eventually you'll probably get to the point where you're just like, I don't really give a shit if the knife is the sharpest out of the box, because you're probably going to sharpen it yourself anyway. And also, I like sharpening, so whenever it gives me a chance to sharpen, I don't really complain about it anyway. So next we have the carat test. Like I said, I don't really expect any wedging from this knife. not sure if I'm a fan of this convexing because it's kind of deflecting the blade a little bit when I'm trying to cut with it. It's not wedging, which is good. But like I said, that convexing feels like it's deflecting my blade and it doesn't stay, it feels like it's not staying true when I'm trying to cut. But it could be a me issue too, because I'm not used to using this knife to cut with. But yeah, compared to the other Daovua knives, excuse me, these fall allergies are no joke. As you guys can see, I mean, the knife is sharp and definitely thin enough where it is not wedging or splitting the food. So I'll be interested to see after finishing this knife a little bit on my own and also giving it a quick touch up or sharpening to see how this knife performs afterwards. And that will probably be the edge that I'll test for the next 6 months before I come back and give you a 6 months follow up on this knife. As you guys can see, I mean, we cut it with no issue. But like I said, it just leaves me wondering whether or not that convexing is supposed to do that. But it definitely feels like it deflected on how true the knife cuts. Let's go ahead. Next, we'll try an onion, so that way we can test out these horizontal cuts. Because a lot of times, I know that's kind of how I test a knife sometimes, is to see whether or not the knife is grinded well enough, to see whether or not the tip flicks through cleanly to an onion. That's kind of one way that I really like to test. Cut the tip off. Let's see. The tip is gliding through very easily. So that's good. I do like this profile quite a bit. This extra long prominent K-tip. It's actually really nice. Okay, so as you guys can see from the cut test, there are some areas that this knife performs well in, and that there are some other areas that I'm not so impressed by. Or it could be that I'm just trying to get used to this knife, that there are some convexing in the grind itself that I'm trying to get used to. But that is yet to be seen. I'll come back here in 6 months and let you guys know what I think. And as we said in the cut test, this knife can definitely use a little bit of a cleanup right out of the box. What I would personally do, is an 800 grit Kingstone, and then I'll follow it up with a Suhiro 3000, which is an Oka stone. I will link everything down below. They are Amazon affiliate links, so only like this small of a percentage even comes to us if you decide to purchase something. Anyway, this wraps up our video for this new Daovua 240mm Full Tang Kiritsuke. And I hope you guys like the video. If you guys do like the video, please hit that like and subscribe button. It will mean the world to me. It'll help me support all of this madness. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.